up? What up? What up?
Hey. How's it going?
Oh man, it's gone. What's going on?
Life.
Yeah, that never stops. That never stops.
That's what somebody should have told me that.
What? It never stops.
Right, right. It's like it never ends. Like every day, I gotta be an adult.
Every single day. What's going on,
So
man?
what's
Welcome to the
new?
Binge-worthy podcast, y'all. I
Right.
got, I gotta get myself right for this one. Whew.
I'm gonna explain something to you, and at some point, uh, I don't want anything to change, but maybe we gonna have to
Mm-hmm.
rebrand this because I think the people who tune in every week, they only
Yeah.
tune in for us to debate. Um, it's been said to me too many times. So I don't know how we brand that or how we market that. I
So
started
our next
cutting up
production
clips.
meeting, I think that's what we're gonna have to. We're gonna have to go with that. We're gonna have to
We
figure that
only
out.
picking things that we see opposite. That has to be when I tell you, and these are people who are so bougie across the
Uh huh.
spectrum. They only tune in to hear us debate, and I'm gonna put a comma next to that. Only if it sounds like you'd have had a drink or two. That's the conversation. That's really the conversation. I'm a quote. I'm a quote Troy Burton. He says, "Whenever the show comes on, I pour myself a drink uh, to get in the mood of it." So if I said that wrong, Troy, if you listen in, type in what you really said. But that was along the lines of what he said. Um,
Okay.
so I have to figure out how we can brand that. Uh,
Yeah, I'm not even sure how to take that. But
I
I'm gonna
didn't
take it
either.
like
I
this.
didn't
Look,
either.
I'm gonna take it like this. If that's what the people want,
If that's what they want.
I think we can. I think we can certainly find a way to deliver that still lends itself to not just some entertainment, but the overall goal, which is just to bring some light to some of the issues out there.
Right.
Um,
I said maybe like some of the other stuff that we talk about, like you said, the foundation of it. Maybe that'll seep into their mind a little bit. Maybe it'll give them a little, something to walk away with, like a goodie bag.
true,
That's the goodie bag, if you
true.
will.
Maybe we should do a focus group with some of the folks that's been watching
Uh huh.
and find out, from them directly, like what's appealing, like what specifically is the appeal,
Right.
and then we run with that. We run
And
with
I'll say
that.
off the back, a couple people enjoyed. I think we did it like the last two times, where it wasn't just
Mm-hmm.
about reviews, where we got into just like topics about
Yeah.
overall topics.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we can definitely look
Yeah,
into
man,
that.
that's what we here to do, man. We got to evolve, you know.
Right,
And
right,
I think at the end of the day, figuring out what your audience really um, responds to and what keeps them
right,
coming back. I mean, I think that's essentially like that's really what it's all about, um, within reason. You know what I
right.
mean? But yeah, man, I completely, I did my research.
Hmm.
I did some reading and stuff, and completely forgot that we was like, just with us meeting on Tuesdays. I think I completely forgot that Valentine's Day was on a Tuesday. Um,
I
and
wasn't,
yeah, so I was.
I didn't want to take you away from your boo.
Thank
I didn't
you.
want
I
to,
appreciate it.
even pose it
I
as a
appreciate
question,
it.
because
Because
I
we
didn't want
we was
nobody.
laid up, and she was like, "Baby, you got the show tonight," and I was like, "I don't think so." Like Nate ain't said nothing.
I mean, it was
I was
because
like,
I had a boo, so I didn't want to interrupt either
Oh,
of
there
our
you go.
boo's
Right.
in the
Hey, there you
process.
go.
Much
My man.
respect.
My man.
I didn't want your boo to be, inboxing me with, theory.
Yeah, like,
But
could you please
yeah, I
not
think
do
we needed a
this
break.
on? Mm.
But so over the weekend, I got to go back to the closing night of is a play called Jump, and they didn't
Mm.
hand out. You know what? I don't know why. Well, plays are trying to save on money, and everything is a QR code now. So I didn't. Normally, I have the playbill with me to talk about, but I didn't have that. And
Mm.
it was a really good play. We talked about it briefly one episode, but shout out to my really good friend and big brother of Jefferson Jefferson Russell. He was one of the characters in the play, and he's actually a resident actor for Everyman Theater. And
Mm-hmm.
when I saw it the first time, it's one of those plays that make you think. Um,
Mm.
and because it closed this weekend, I can really give out the meaning of it. But it was a family that's coming together to sell a house. Uh, uh, the
Oh Lord.
mother passed away a few years ago, and and because of the death, everybody kind of went in their own separate ways. There's two sisters and a father, and they they kind of coming together to finally get rid of the house. Well, we learned during the process of them getting rid of the house that the sister, who is one of the characters, is not really a living character. And she actually committed suicide maybe like a couple months prior to where they are in the play.
Mm.
And it is really interesting to see it because you don't realize that until like a little past the halfway point because there's no intermission. It just went straight through, and you don't even realize you've been sitting there for that much time. And that's a pretty good play to make you forget about an intermission. It was a
Mm.
really good play. It dealt with suicide and how people deal with grief and just the parent-child dynamic, you know, because each parent typically has a favorite child and dealing with the stress of that and being a favorite child. And it also, for me, I walked away with um, sometimes people, especially the typical outwardly strong people, they ask for help in different ways than the
Mm.
typical person. I'm not gonna say the weak person, but the person who you would think need help or the person who isn't comfortable with it, um, normally asks for help in a different way, especially when it's like life or death.
Mm.
And the whole central kind of setting around this play was a bridge, and that's how the sister committed suicide.
Mm.
And it was a really interesting play. It had a lot of dynamics. I think for Black families, and how we deal with grief, and how we deal with depression, and how we just deal with death overall, and how to we have to be strong enough to ask for help at times, and out the people around us, our village, we have to be strong enough to receive when someone needs help instead of. I think we've gotten into a space in time where I don't want no bad energy. I don't want no negativity. I don't want none of that around me. And we're missing valuable signs when people are asking for help when their quote unquote
Mm.
vibes aren't. So it was a
Mm.
really good play. So much so that I went back uh, this Sunday to the closing night to go see it again because you know how sometimes you miss things, and I wanted to just go back and see it and then talk about it today. But uh, look around when you know you can go to the theaters. Everything is opening back up now. It's pretty much open back up now. So go out and
Yeah.
see people, and there's a lot of local artists that are doing great work in the city, and a lot of these theater houses, especially professional theater houses, that would never do our work, is now putting our work first. Uh, for whatever reason, they're putting our work first. It's in our best interest, whether it is locally, whether it's community theater, whether it's regional, whether it's Broadway, to go out and see our work in all shapes and fashion, not just theater, but just our work. Because a lot of our work is now being looked at as not only valuable, but worthy of these spaces. So let's go out and support them because often a lot of these spaces are using our work to bring in an audience, then they stop doing it until the pendulum swings back. So take the time.
Hmm.
It was interesting that a play like this that was mainly, well, it was all people of color. It was one Asian man in it. Had an audience of all white people, and I understand that's the audience from every man or whatever theater house it's at. But we have to begin to flood these spaces so our work can be seen just as worthy and valuable as anything else that they would normally play. That I've seen
Hmm.
quite a few theaters do some pieces that they would have never done, say 5, 10 years ago. So
Hmm.
that was my take on Jump. I wanted to start off with that one, but was it did you have any questions about it, or did you have anything that you saw over the
Yeah, you
weekend that's
said
not?
that it closed this past weekend.
Yes,
Oh,
this
okay.
Sunday was the last
Got you.
week,
Got you. Got you.
and I'm
Got you.
signing us up. Well, I'll talk about that later, but yeah, it was the final weekend of it, and it was a really good play. Um, and I love, when you sometimes you go to see those things, those people don't live here. They normally would have
Hmm.
cast it from other places. Jefferson is he lives and presides in Baltimore, even though he does other regional or traveling companies. The
Hmm.
one of the daughters, both of the daughters are from Maryland. Well, one of the girls is actually one of the youth theater from Arena Players, and the other young lady lives in the Maryland area. And I believe the Asian man now lives here in Baltimore. So the cast was completely Maryland, um, majority Baltimore. So call and support the arts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So it's an interesting. Yeah. Anything
It's
that you
vitally
saw this
important.
weekend, or
So, I finally got to see the Miss Pat show.
oh, was
Um,
it interesting?
and yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I really did. Like I actually didn't even realize just how refreshing it is to have, like it's really unique. It's exactly what you
Right.
said it was. It's your typical sitcom, but it's it's being presented in a format that they don't have to worry about. It's not on network TV, so they
Yeah.
don't. It was actually jarring because you get
Yeah.
so much from it that you're just not used to getting from a your typical sitcom, and yet it is filmed and presented like it could have easily been in the, what was it? What do we call it? The TGIF lineup?
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It could
Yeah.
have been. It could
Yeah.
have been before or after Martin on Fox Friday night. But then it just goes further. It just and it's funny because I felt like, you got everything that you would get from those other sitcoms just in a much raw format. Like some of the topics
Mm.
that are discussed and the way that they're discussed, you just expect that more from like a movie or like a hour long drama, that's fully scripted versus this filmed in front of an actual audience. I love how it starts as if she's, a comedy routine and then just kind of
Mhm.
seamlessly transitions into the episode. Um,
It
but
feels like
she's
theater
hilarious.
almost.
Like she's hilarious.
Mhm.
It's so much happening in that show. It's actually it's actually low key genius in my opinion. And
Mhm.
now, mind you, I'm very early in. I've watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes so far. Um, but from what I've seen so far,
So you
it's
started with
fresh.
season 1.
It's fresh. Yeah, yeah. I started with season 1,
Okay.
with
Okay.
the first episode.
Season 3 will be
So
out, I think, shortly. I think the
I
end of this
mean,
month, beginning of next month, season season 3 will be out.
all I can really say to people, if you haven't seen it, if you were a fan of Martin, if you were a fan of the Fresh Prince in Living Color, if you were a fan of A Different World, Cosby Show,
Mhm.
Roseanne, before we found
Yeah.
out those things about Roseanne, and if you were a fan of like that, that late 80s, early 90s, you know, just typical like front of a studio audience style comedy
Mhm.
show, you will love Miss Pat. You will
And
love it.
that's what, when I was describing it to you, that's what
And you
I
cannot
said.
have the kids around because I watched it and didn't realize
Right. But it's
like
still, I
halfway through the
think
second
I think some
episode,
of
I
the
had to
subject
pause it
matter says that.
because I'm like,
Yeah.
the kids were there. And it's not even that, it's like if you're not comfortable with your kids kind of hearing certain language and
Right. Yeah.
because like I think overall it's a good show. Like it's
Mhm.
just it is extra raunchy. Where it, where all the other sitcoms had to kind of like walk up to that line,
Yeah.
and every now and then they could teeter beyond it, but they pretty
Yeah.
much stayed behind that line. Miss
Well,
Pat
you
is
said
like,
it
fuck this
also,
line, and
but you said it. You said it. A lot of those were networks shows that we were
yeah,
referring to.
yeah, mm-hmm,
So all of them, I looked at that show and um it borrows from, I wish Thea could have been the show. Thea could have been
mm-hmm.
with Thea Vidal, could have been as honest as this. If you I got to see Miss Pat because she comes to Baltimore quite a lot. So I got to see her at the
I can see her
comedy
being
club
real
here.
comfortable in front of
And
crowds here.
it but that is her comedy. That is her brand of comedy. And I wish, say, like Thea Vidal. Thea Vidal was mouth was way worse than Miss Pat's mouth. So I wish she
Mm-hmm.
could have done a show in reflection of her comedy. But again, that was, prime time network TV. So they was not gonna let her do that. Um, Same thing in a number of the comedians who had shows, but a lot of the comedians, unlike Miss Pat, was were not playing themselves. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of this stuff from the Miss Pat show is kind of bits and pieces of her life.
It's
So
very
she
much
actually
bits and
sold
pieces
crack.
of her life.
Um,
Yeah. Like
so
almost down
she
to the fact that
had a
she
lot of
kept the names of the
right,
original folk, even though they're played by actors in the show. Um,
right,
like I was reading
hmm
up on it.
yeah,
And so I think the last episode I watched was the episode where the oldest daughter shows up. The one that
yeah. That's season one.
there's
Yeah,
there's some tension with that one. And
yeah,
and I was reading at the same time that I was watching, and like
mhm,
her oldest daughter's actual name is Ashley. So in the
yeah,
show, it's Ashley, even though it's being
yeah,
portrayed by an actress.
yeah.
But
Even
no,
down to her
it's
moving
a
to this suburban city
yeah, like it's
outside,
literally her
out.
life just kind of on
That's her life.
display.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
But very good,
And it's not,
incredibly funny.
it's not done in a way that's like too much. But when I first
No,
saw it,
to
it
be
was very
honest,
jarring to me because you only
it.
typically get to see that in, in white dramas or white TV. You don't get to see that with a lot of black without
Mhm.
it being real ghetto, real
Right.
too
It's
over the
very
top.
it's
It didn't
initially
seem
very
that's what it was. It didn't
jarring,
seem over the top.
but it's also not over the top. and there's an honesty to it. Like there is
Mhm.
there's a very blatant honesty to the conversations, to the scenarios. And as funny as it is, it's funny because everybody really is kind of playing it straight. Like there's no, like you said, there's not a lot of over the top stuff. It's very kind of matter of
Yeah.
factual is in the way that they present. Like the characters just are. They're trying to be like, I'm the loudmouth sister. It's like I'm the sister and I'm loud and I'm a little rough around the edges. But there's an honesty with the performances, where they're not. It's not just laughs for laughs sake or jokes for jokes sake, that everything
Mhm.
is really tailored to like the overall theme or topic of the episode. And I really appreciate that. Like, and so the jarring
Right.
of it is very, very, it's very uniquely balanced with the reality of this life that's being portrayed. And it's really good. I'm going to be binging that quite a bit. I think in
Well,
the near
well,
future.
season two is just as funny. But season two they start getting into more situational family situations and such.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's also what I like about it. Like these are just some of the same topics that you would get, say, on a network show, but they get to talk about it. Like they don't just skirt over the issue that the sister is a crackhead. They don't
Right.
skirt over the issue that this black mother, which they've never portrayed a black mother in that way, used to sell crack. Like the daughter is
Mm-hmm.
gay, and they just talk about issues in a way, and then it's really season two. I think is going to be more, but they really talk about the fact that they've been transplanted into this all white community with the
Mm.
ways that they have and who they are. But it was, yeah. I'm glad you got to like at least sample it. You gonna be definitely that's a good binge worthy uh,
Mm.
uh, show to watch. But
Yeah.
anything else that you get to see?
Um. No. The Miss Pat show. What else? Of course, like I'm a big fan of The Last of Us, which is currently on HBO. Really good show, really
Hmm.
well done. I'm not, it doesn't. I don't know if it fits that well into like our like rank, like what we typically discuss, but um, it's HBO, and
Hmm.
it's definitely
What is it about?
right in line with.
What's the like
So,
the
uh, so it's
overall?
based on a video. It's actually based on a video game called The Last of Us, about essentially a zombie apocalypse. They're a little bit different than your typical zombies. Um, but the
Okay.
game, I remember, I've never played the game, but I remember that there was a lot going on about the game itself, and just how good it was, and a lot of it was around the story around the game that was really being like lauded at the time. So there's a
Hmm.
really good story to the game that they've now adapted into a show. And it's just, it's just really good. It's the performances are top notch. The story is really good. From what I've, like I'm someone who did not play the game, so I'm not sitting there like, uh, oh, that's different from the game, or like that's not how it went down in the game, which I know is a little bit of a part of the conversation, but typically it just seems like, um, even people who have some who would typically have issues with changes are embracing this show. It's
Hmm.
blowing all types of records out the water for HBO. It's really good. Um,
I said I'm gonna sit down and
Oh,
watch
you
it
know
because a
what I
couple of
watched?
friends have recommended it.
Okay, so like it was a long weekend this weekend for us that worked in the schools. Um, we got a 3 day weekend, three and a half,
Mhm.
I guess, depending on whether or not you had to fulfill a full 8 hours of PD on Friday. But I watched the first season of Hunters on Amazon
Mhm.
Prime, which
Right.
was really good. And Hunters is a show loosely based on some Nazi hunters who I think in the 1970s had discovered that there were Nazis living in the United States. And this show is kind of pushing the envelope. I mean, it's about a group of literal Nazi hunters. Like they go out, they find them, they verify that they were actually Nazis, and then they kill them. Um, and I remember it's been out for a while. I think season 2 just came out. Um, but another really good one. Al Pacino is in it. His first television role. Um, so I ended up binge watching the whole first season over the weekend.
Mhm.
It was that good. Um, and then of course, the show that we're gonna be talking about today.
Well, let's jump right into it.
I can't wait
Um,
to hear what you think. Tell me.
so the film that we're talking about is The Reading. Um, and today's topic was don't call it a comeback. Because I'm a Monique fan, and
As am I.
supporter throughout everything. This drama that she's been attached to and all. And a lot of people are calling it like her comeback. People who have been dogging her and joining the bandwagon are
Mm.
silent. A lot of my friends who I know couldn't stand her because of how she to all of this and how she's been so outspoken, quiet. When I called them, I called a couple people just to get their reaction so we can talk about it
Hmm.
today. I mean, everybody loved it. Now, I'm not gonna say, well, I did love it. I mean, I think it was a good film. My
Hmm.
and we can get into like the technical stuff after, but overall, I think what's his name? Who was the director of this? Um,
So the
what
director
is his name?
is a young
The
guy, Courtney Glaude. I'm not sure, and I apologize
not
if I'm chopping this up, but it's Courtney
right.
Glaude. Glaude. It's spelled Glaude, which I think you pronounce
So
as
between
Glaude.
the director and the producer, I think I was referring to the producer, um,
Mhm. The
her
producer is
friend,
Lee Daniels.
um, Lee Daniels. I couldn't get his name out.
Yeah, Lee
He was
Daniels is
very smart
produced it.
to make
Mhm.
amends with her. He was very smart to make amends with her, um, and shore this up and get her back in a space where people can see how brilliant she was. Because I think because of all the stuff that happened with Precious, we couldn't see this trend keep going. Now we did see her in the Bessie movie, which she was really good in
Mhm.
as well. But because it was such a shadow and a cloud over her, people didn't really go out and see it probably the way they should.
Mhm. Now
Um,
Bessie
but this was
was that
really
was
good.
Queen
Bessie
Latifah,
was the
correct?
one with her and Queen Latifah. When Queen
Okay.
Latifah played Bessie Smith and she played Ma Rainey,
Hmm.
which was really. And if y'all missed that movie, Queen Latifah is as she's getting older, is getting much better. Um, it's still the musical part is still cringy to me whenever she sings, but outside of
Hmm.
that, we got to see Monique play Ma Rainey. which was, and what was contrast, we got to see Viola Davis play Ma Rainey, and we got to see Monique play it first. And it
Mm,
wasn't, you really, people will always say Viola Davis, but she really good version of her because it was a specific moment in time for Monique's, and Viola Davis play her in over time type of thing. But
mm-hmm.
um, it was really I just thought the movie was interesting. My so I'll say what you thought, and then we can get into the
Mm-hmm.
parts, technical parts of it.
So let's see. In 2009 and 2010, right? Um, Monique, who had I think mostly
Hmm.
been, for the most part, had really just been known for her comedy, mostly her stand-up comedy. I mean, I think she had been in several films by this time, but nothing that like really I don't think garnered any attention or notoriety particularly. Um,
But
she
mainly
was
just
in,
the Parkers though.
yeah, and she was in this film called Precious. And I remember watching
Right.
Precious for the first time and really thinking to myself, like, damn, Monique eating this shit up. Um,
Hmm.
she played this really, really just nasty character that, it was one of those roles and it was one of those performances that really, you almost forgot this was Monique because her
Mm,
speech patterns were the same, and I think the way that she delivered certain things, was very familiar because being a fan, we had watched Monique for so long, but still there was something just ridiculously compelling just watching that. And maybe it was a little bit of the fact that it was just so trauma laced that made it so interesting, just
yeah.
watching this woman treat her daughter that way. um but it was what it was. Like you can have your feelings about the character, but I don't think there's too many people that would disagree that it was a hell of a compelling performance from Monique. And then towards the end of the movie, there's this scene where she breaks down, and she
Yeah.
almost goes into this kind of like just explanation, and like just not so much of an explanation, but just it was her moment to really kind of explain where she was coming from, where this character was coming from. And
Right.
it was captivating. You know, uh, it was almost, it was almost tear worthy. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it brought so much to the forefront, things that we know happen to people. Some of us have probably seen it, some of us haven't, but for me, it kind of brought that idea of like trauma being circular and just generationally passed on. Um, really, really just said a lot. It was an amazing performance, and because of it, she won an Oscar. And it was a very well deserved
Mhm.
Oscar, in my opinion. Um, And one of the things about it was that regardless, like I'm sitting there and I'm watching it, and I know this is Monique, the comedian, but it was just so believable. It literally took me out of what I had come to expect from her as a performer and just gave me something um just awesome as far as a performance is concerned. Um the reading was not it at all. I got none of that watching the reading. Um,
Mhm.
I saw what they were trying to do. I disagree that this was a powerful performance from Monique. This shit was minstrel in my opinion. I laughed most of the movie, and I wasn't laughing in a good way. Like there've been movies that I've watched where there are situations happening that you shouldn't laugh at. but then something happens that's humorous and you can't help but let out a little uncomfortable chuckle. This wasn't it. I laughed at this goddamn movie like it was a comedy. I went to social media. Well, no, that's not true. I had seen before you reached out and said, let's talk about the reading next week. It was on my list of things to see because I had seen little mentions of it on social media, mostly on Twitter. I hadn't seen it, a lot of people talking about it on my like Facebook timeline, but I definitely was catching mentions here and there on Twitter, and people were like praising the performance, particularly from Monique. Like they weren't, and nobody was dropping any spoilers, so I had no idea what the movie was about going in. Everybody was just saying that Monique killed this shit, and I was like, all right, I got to see it. And then you hit me up and was like, hey, let's talk about this at the next show. And I was like, perfect. This gives me, now I'm motivated. Like, I got to put this to the top of the list. I watched it twice, Nate. I watched it and I was like, maybe I was just in a bad mood that day or something. So I watched it again just to be sure. That shit was trash, bro. That shit was trash. And the fact that so many people are praising that performance, I don't know what to tell you. I don't. I don't know how we all watched Precious and watched her go on to win an Academy Award and then watch that and felt like that was. I literally pretty much laughed the whole movie. I thought the movie was ridiculous. I thought that it had a hell of an interesting concept, but it was predictable. I pretty much figured out in like the first 6 minutes that she was the one, that she had did it. I saw that coming a mile away. But I was still like, okay, whatever. Some movies are predictable like that. Let's see what's going to go down. And it just, nothing about that movie did it for me. Nothing. So then I went back to social media, and now I'm looking with intention. Like I'm looking with intention, and almost everybody is literally praising that shit. So I didn't know where you sat on the spectrum, because you titled the episode "Don't Call It a Comeback," and from my perspective, I was like, nope, don't call that a comeback, not at all. That was, I think she's been out of the game for a while because of all that controversy that was going on. But honestly, I don't even know if I blame her for that shit. I don't think I blame her. I thought the story was surface level to the point that it was laughable. And I think, and honestly, I started wondering two things. I was wondering if maybe the movie would have landed different under a more experienced filmmaker. Because I was wondering if maybe the issue was that, this guy, I was looking at his profile and he's done some really good stuff, at least from what I've read. But it's not a lot. Like, he's very, very much on the beginning of his career as a filmmaker. And I was wondering if maybe the level of performance that the script was requiring, maybe as a director, he just wasn't there yet to kind of pull that from his actors. I thought about maybe if I was being a little bit unfair, and that sometimes I think when you have a character like that and it's being played by an African American, I think there's a little bit of like, come on, yo, we don't do that. You know what I mean? If that makes any type of sense. And I was thinking about some other films that I've seen recently that kind of called for the same kind of performance. So I was thinking about there was a movie that came out a year and a half ago, about a year and a half ago, with Nia Long and um, Omar Epps, and he was like the deranged stalker. And I remember feeling that it was like just way over the top and like unbelievable. Um, so I was wondering if maybe that played into it. But regardless of whatever the reason behind it, all these people that's praising this performance, I don't know what the fuck. I feel like I looked at a different movie. Like I feel like maybe I got the fake version of BET Plus, and I got the bootleg copy of this film, and somewhere there's it exists like the actual film that everybody else saw, and I didn't see it because this shit this shit was not it.
But see, I don't think that. So that's why I said, and then we can get into the technical parts of it. So for me, I think so many people were like done with her because she was the unpopular person. She was
Well,
the
let's just be
underdog.
clear.
So people
Let's
were
be
just
clear.
tired of the.
For the purpose of this conversation, let me just be clear. I was never done with Monique. I had some reservations about how Monique handled the situation, but I never got to a place where I was like, fuck Monique. I'm not going to see anything that she's in. I'm no longer interested in seeing her stuff. Nah, like when all that subsided and I knew she had stuff coming because I think she got a Netflix special coming too. I was like, okay, let's get back to it. So like there was never a situation like I was going in like wanting Monique to do badly, or I didn't talk so much shit about Monique that now I need her to not be great. And I know that might play
funny
into
that you
some
said,
other
I
people's
think a lot of the people
motivations.
that I heard talking about it, I think the exact opposite happened. People wanted this to be good. I think a lot of people wanted this to be good because they wanted whatever had won with Monique to end so she can go back to her momentum. Now,
And she will. She
overall,
will.
I liked Monique's performance. I just liked her performance. What I think went wrong, as you said, one, Lee should have picked a different director. He should have picked somebody who this was their
Well,
genre.
this was his story.
Now I don't know if he could have got a Pale.
Yeah, and I
don't know
want to
if he
be
could have
fair
got
because
him,
this
but
was the director was not just the director; it was his story. Like he wrote it.
and see
He's a director,
that's
but
a bad combination.
this is a, and sometimes it can be. You right. Sometimes it can be, but also like, you know, uh, you know, you direct. You know what I'm saying? And then for some people, because I could go into some issues with the writing per se. I think there was some plot holes in the whole thing, and then there was some shit in the movie that just didn't make no damn sense. But actually, the whole premise didn't make no fucking sense. But we can get to that later. But it's a mixed bag. When you playing both hats and writer, director, producer, but this was original. This was an original story by the director that he also wrote or co-wrote. So I get it. I mean, like as an independent up and coming artist, if you're not gonna buy my shit and then give it to somebody else to make. If I'm also a director, right? Like if I'm just a writer, fine. But if I'm a director who also writes and I come up with this story that is, worthy of being produced as a film, or someone's willing to put money into it, you're not gonna take that from me. So I can't fault the brother for that.
I'm gonna extract that one point that you just made, that point, and I'm gonna put that on the tail end of today's show because I think that's a noteworthy conversation to be had.
Because that
I'll
goes into the
say
knowing
that was
your
a
worth.
bad choice. Right. Well, knowing your worth, one, but also as a creator, as a writer, you should also, it's like sending your child to school and then you show up every day at the school telling the teacher how to teach. Like at some point, that teacher go call the office and ask you to be escorted out the building.
Yeah. But that's
And I
also,
know
I've
that's a
heard that.
crazy.
Is that something they
Mhm.
teach in film? I wonder.
Um,
Because being a
well,
theater
it's not
actor, I've heard that. I
unofficial
know that that's a thing in the
school,
theater.
but see, film school, you're taught everything.
Hmm.
I think across the board, like no matter what, no matter so I went to school for theater, so I had to take acting classes the same way I
Hmm.
had to take, and I went to school for theater, so I had to take acting classes, directing classes, and stage management classes. So you're taught. So I also had to learn how to run lights. I also, but typically, and that's how you can tell that was a new director,
Hmm.
because at some point you learn that I can't do everything. I
Right.
just can't do everything. When you go to school, you're taught how to do everything. So you have a idea of what is needed so you know who to hire. But if you're
Hmm.
acting in something, directing something, and starring in something, that is a recipe, Tyler Perry, for not so good work. And
you never,
is
you
normally
never miss an
it's not
opportunity
totally
to throw
horrible.
some shade at the boy Tyler Perry, man.
But you can but you would not, would you say if he would have did one of those jobs,
Hmm.
a lot of those movies would have been much better. Like you
Um.
can't make yourself the star of something and you're directing something and you're
Hmm.
writing something and you're producing something. That
Right.
just, so for this, I'll go back to
So
this film. That's a
I've
bad
always been able
combination
to
for me.
I've always been able to forgive Tyler Perry because of the story that I read around how that came to be. Um, because the
What
story
is that?
that I read was that it was never his intention for it to become what it became. But
In terms of this movie?
life happens. No, no, the Medea character, like the story that I heard,
No, no, no. I mean,
yeah,
I'm just saying. But Tyler Perry didn't go to school for this either.
hmm,
So what he was learning was how to do. For me, I think, and it's typically a financial decision that you make. So if I can get the person that wrote this to also direct this as a producer, I'm gonna say go ahead.
hmm,
And I don't think that's a smart choice. For me,
hmm,
I wouldn't make that choice. For me, I would definitely keep those two people separate. So if you as a
hmm,
writer, I don't think you should do anything associated to this because there's a difference between a person sitting down write something who has ideas of where this could go. In order for you to effectively write this, you have to go and direct something that, in order for you to effectively direct this, you have to go out and that's not yours. And
hmm,
then you'll get a better sense of directing versus you just directing stuff that is yours. I think
right,
is a big difference. I think you should at least go out and direct other stuff first. Like an actor, I don't feel like you should be in something and direct it or be in something and produce it because you it's kind of canceling something out. You don't see where something of quality is missing. I, I've had to direct something and be in it on two separate occasions when an actor at the last minute couldn't do it. Like they
hmm,
both times the actor was in an accident and got sick. So I have a choice because
hmm,
it's theater. You got to do it.
yeah,
Um, and I could tell production week was horrible. Now, because all the actors was really good, we were able to pull it off. But me as the actor in that, I was too much into the directing aspect of it to be able
hmm,
to gauge my own acting. and that's just my personal
Mm,
experience and what I've seen from fellow um, friends and other people in the industry. I just think it's not a good idea, and I can tell where um, I can tell where that was off balance in the casting. I can tell where that was off. One, because we see none of these faces anywhere else,
mm,
and they were relying strictly on Monique to carry this, which
mm-hmm.
is not a problem if the were wrong. But some like the young man who played friend, I that was off. That was horrible to me.
The young man who played
His
who?
acting was just not good.
Which one?
The young man who played the boyfriend, the one kind of
Mm,
pushing them to do these like readings. Like
mm.
that wasn't good to me. The girl who did the readings, she was pretty good to me. Um,
I liked
the
her
other young lady
until
that was kind
until
of like
until
their
sh
assistant, yeah, she was pretty good.
until yeah, they was oh my god, and I had issues with
Until
the story itself and just mm, mm, mm. I did not like this movie.
with that, you can clearly see,
Oh man.
and I read who the director was, but I didn't to it was just one of the contributing writers to the piece.
Hmm.
I think that's a recipe for disaster. Really it is. And I think it was a bad choice to add comedy to it. Like minus the comedy, we would have laughed anyway because we just know Monique is a fool acting. But I think adding the comedy to it that because then that took it over the top for me. That
Mm.
just made it too much. Like we were gonna laugh at some of the stuff happening anyway, but why make it comedy
Right.
when it didn't have to be? Like
Hmm.
that's the part that kind of I even love the pivot. I love the pivot in her demeanor and how when she came back to sit back down, in my mind, oh shit, she did it. Like you can tell her whole change. So I like some of the choices, but you can tell some of that was the actors' choices, and it wasn't
Hmm.
necessarily directed. But that's just my personal belief. But I just don't think that all elements made for a good movie. Now, what's about to happen is we gonna get a part two to this, and I'm
We
gonna
ain't gonna
need
get no
for
part two
them
to this.
to listen.
We ain't gonna
The
get no
way
part two
I'm
to
telling
this.
you, the way it ended is gonna be a part two to it.
Well, I think that's
I
why it's
promise
not
you.
gonna be a part two
I
because
promise you.
honestly, so if there's a part two, there's no Monique. And whether you liked
They gonna
it
bring her back
or
though,
you didn't like
because
it, whether you
now it's
liked it
gonna
or
be haunted.
oh no, I don't see that happening. I hope they don't do that. I hope they don't do
It's
that.
the house is gonna be
I
haunted.
really hope they don't do
It's
that.
gonna be. I'm
I mean,
telling
this is not a
you,
movie that deserves a sequel.
the way this was, like you said,
This is
it does.
not a
I didn't
movie
say
that
it
deserves a
deserved it.
sequel.
I definitely didn't say it
You think they're
deserved
gonna
it.
do it
I'm just
anyway?
saying the way it ended, I can. You like you said, this was very predictable, and they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna follow that predictable story pattern, and they're gonna bring it back. Monique is gonna haunt this house. It's gonna be another family that comes in, and they're gonna get this. This happened in the uh oh my god, what was that story? It was like like every season the theme changed or something. What was it? What
Oh,
was
like
it?
American
Like
Horror
every
Story?
season they had a different theme to the I think
Yeah,
right.
American
I
Horror
think
Story.
one of the horror stories. This was like a similar storyline where it just switched over. So now it's gonna be about another family they're gonna bring in. Then they're gonna have to find this girl to figure out how to get Monique's spirit out of the house. Because Monique gonna start killing everybody that
But
come live in the house.
the
It's gonna
movie
be so
actually,
ridiculous.
okay, so like I don't think this is gonna happen because the movie actually, and the movie postulates like that her spirit isn't in the house anymore. Because are we
I
talking
don't.
spoilers now? Are we talking spoilers? Can we
I don't
talk
believe
spoilers?
that. But
Because the movie kind of ends.
yeah, we can talk spoilers.
The movie insinuates that Monique has possessed the girl. So the girl is no longer herself. That Monique actually, after she killed her, she possessed her, which is something that was alluded to earlier in the film when she was talking about why she was so uncomfortable with what they had been doing because the spirits were getting closer and closer to her, and some of them were not, some of them were malevolent. Which, the movie kind of ends alluding to the fact that although she killed Monique, Monique's spirit then like took her over.
And I get that. And either way they go, it's gonna be a part 2.
So you could have a sequel. I just don't know how you end up with a sequel with Monique.
For these pattern ways. You say that again?
I said I think
I didn't
that
hear
the
you.
movie could easily. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Nate, can you? Okay. What I was saying was that I think that
what you said.
Okay, I think that the movie could easily have a sequel. I'm just it would like how do you incorporate Monique into that unless you turn it into like some haunted house story. But the way the first movie ended, it alluded to the fact that Monique was no longer in the house. Like her spirit was now in possession of this other girl.
Well, then I'm gonna tell you, both the director and me. Well, I'll speak as a director. I wouldn't want to write it out, but as a director and me, if we go with your perspective, like Monique has kind of taken over and got into her form. It's a way to play. I think it would be part 2 could be part 1. I mean, but they just can't. The comedy part of it. That's the part that was because what made me not want to watch this was everybody who was kept talking about how funny it was. Humor and horror don't go well with me. When I think of humor and horror, I think of
I
the
don't think that
Wayne's
shit was
brother
intentional,
horror
Nate.
movie. That's what I think about.
I don't think that shit was intentional.
But I think it was. I think it was.
I don't. I think that's what I hated. That's what I like was really kind of like
funny.
I don't. Was crazy. And I don't think that's what happened. I don't think they was trying to play up the funny at all.
Because we didn't see any of that. We didn't see any of that in Precious though. In every other movie,
no, let's not compare this. Let's not compare this to Precious. Let's not compare this to. I don't know if we can.
No, but it's something to be said because if it wasn't intentional, we would have seen the humor in those 2 movies, and we didn't see that. We laughed at, but it wasn't because she was being comedic. But you're like,
I don't think
it was simply. I can tell that was a director's choice.
Yo, I don't, and okay, I disagree. I don't think it was a director's choice. I think that the difference between the 2 performances is that before I talk about the difference, let me just say this. Like I said, I also laughed the whole way through the fucking movie. I don't think I was laughing
Mhm.
because there was anything in the movie that was intending to be funny. I think it was laughing because the performance was just so over the top and ridiculous that was all I could do was laugh at it. Like, I don't think people were
And I
laughing at
think that was,
moments in the movie. I think that people were laughing at just how fucking ridiculous it was.
but I don't. That's not
I
any
was
of the
laughing
reviews that
because
I
I
got.
did not believe
Most
her
of
as a
Monique was
psycho
very
killer.
funny
I
to
didn't
me.
believe Monique. I didn't believe Monique at all as a psycho killer. I didn't
And that's
at
and
all.
I'm
And
saying, in my
I think the movie
opinion,
wanted me to believe her.
infused
I think the
harmony
movie
into that.
wanted me to believe her. I think the movie wanted me to find her singing her rendition of Freddy Krueger's 1-2, Freddy's Coming for You, as something creepy and disturbing. And
But that's but that is a
it
part.
was just
But
fucking
no,
funny.
that's a part
I
of
do not
Monique's comedy.
believe that the conversation
Specifically, that
was
song. That's
let's sing this song and make it funny. I think that
I
the
don't think it was
intention,
conversation. I think it was that. It's a difference when you say anything, no matter what actors you have, you still have influence from the director. And
yes.
I think specifically that song, it was uh it was a direction that they went with because that song is a part of Monique's comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it was a conscious decision to add humor into this because it just I don't know why. I'm not even gonna say why. I'm just gonna say it was a
Yeah,
conscious decision, in my opinion, to add comedy to this. And I thought that
I
was a
didn't get that at
bad
all.
choice.
I didn't get that at all. I didn't get that at
Anytime
all.
you
And
mix
that's actually why
anything
I thought it
comedic
was
with
so horribly bad because I actually, from what I
mm-mm.
saw, and like me watching it twice, I strongly disagree that the intention was humor. I strongly disagree.
But I'm telling you why.
I
I'm
think that
being
their
and not only
intention
with
was to have
the song,
a
the song is what
you think the song is what gives it away.
that song is what really made me solidify just naturally funny. It's not just naturally funny. This is definitely something that they because I don't like mixing comedy with stuff. Comedy needs to be comedy on its own. And I think they mixed in comedy with this horror movie. And it didn't the other actors in it were not strong enough to be able to be the fall guy or to be, they wasn't strong enough to do that. And it just wasn't solid enough for me. It really wasn't.
All
And
right.
I was trying to keep going. Like I zoomed in on Monique's performance, and that was it. Because I didn't really feel
Mm-hmm.
like if you were gonna use comedy, you needed actors that were also funny. And I didn't see that in any of them other characters. And that's why I said the boyfriend character was it was so he just was bad. It just didn't look good for me.
He was
Um
also badly written.
it was and that was another thing, but that's why I blamed a
There was
lot on the
serious plot
director
holes
though.
in the film. There's serious plot holes in the film. Like I was
I think they
asking,
gave one of my once I watched it the first time, one of the things I didn't like about it from the beginning was they gave too much information in the beginning. Nothing was left. That's why I think it became to be so predictable because they gave so much information. Like you knew something was gonna happen when they went to her house. Something was gonna happen. Even if you couldn't predict what it was, you knew something bad was gonna happen. So they left so much open to the naked eye that you
mm,
had to be just sitting there waiting for something to happen. But I just think I think the writing was bad, as you said. I think the direction was almost as if he was a fan of Monique's and
The
just wanted to
story, on the other
use.
hand, was a hell of an interesting concept. It was
Mhm.
just poorly. It was just
But
poorly
well,
executed,
I
in
don't
my
think
opinion. It was
I'm trying to think
poorly
of something we've
executed.
seen like this before.
Like you know what I kept asking myself?
Yeah.
I was like, all right, so I killed my family. Why the fuck
Mhm.
did I invite? Why the fuck would I invite a psychic to my house? And I couldn't get over that. I was like, who would take that risk? Now, the movie explains it away as like, oh, they think if they do this, it'll up her book sales. But she was already, like, her book sales were already like through the roof because of what happened to her. Like, why the fuck would you invite a
Mhm.
psychic to your house to commune with the
But I
people
think,
you murdered?
but I that was confusing to me as well. But I just chalked that off as she just trying to market what she's doing,
Nah,
and
I
I
was like,
didn't
that was
because
a stupid premise.
it
What
was
I was
such a
looking for
opening space for it.
what I was looking for was like a plot where, like, she had done her research and she knew that this girl was the real deal, and there was information that maybe, like, she needed from her husband or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
maybe she got the insurance money, but she knew there was more. And this motherfucker died and had the key password to his crypto account that she was trying to get into. Like, I was looking for some reason why somebody who murdered their family
Mm.
would invite a
But
psychic to their
she
house.
said that she
She said what?
said that when she flipped into the other character, she said that
She said
she
what?
said she knew, well, not that specifically, but her intention for doing this was she didn't want to be poor. Like, he had made a bad
Oh, no, no,
business
no.
deal and
That's
they were
why.
gonna lose it
That's why
all,
she
and she didn't
killed
want to be
them.
poor anymore.
That's why she killed them, and she got
Right.
insurance money. She didn't want kids. She didn't want to be poor. But it still does not explain
Uh-huh.
why the fuck you would invite a psychic to your house to specifically to commune with the family members that you murdered. That just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. That just doesn't make sense
Because
at all.
that's ultimately, and what see, the weird part of that was that's how the young lady figured out it was her. That's how the young lady, because she was getting that from the
Yeah,
family. But
exactly.
that
Like,
was,
she was the real,
again,
like,
that was
she
a
was the
very,
real deal.
that's why I said direction. Right,
Right.
right.
That's a
And I know
story issue right there.
sometimes
Like,
you can get a script that sometimes you can get a script that is poorly written or has in poorly written or has those types of holes in it. And it's up to the director to either get an edit from the writer
mhm.
or to um, direct around it. And it looked like he just tried to direct around it, because that wouldn't have made sense at all, especially if after the fact she gives the reason for why she killed
But
them and
but
it
here's the
doesn't match
thing.
up. So why are they here? Why would you choose them to be?
Here's the thing though. If Monique's performance had truly been what a lot of people claiming it was, I would have been able to forgive any pothole, any plot hole, or lapse in story cohesion. But it wasn't.
Hmm.
It wasn't. This was bad. I'm glad it came out on BET Plus.
I was,
I'm glad it
I
came
was,
out on BET Plus.
I
You know what coming out on
liked
BET
her
Plus means right
performance
now?
again,
It
but
means that it's only got one review on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, this shit is gonna have its little moment on Twitter, in the Twitterverse, and then, like,
mhm.
nobody will remember this movie in like 6 to 8 months. And Monique can
But
go
I
on and do
haven't
whatever the
seen a
fuck
lot
she
of
wants.
people say they didn't like it though. That's the weird thing.
That
Everybody
is
who
that
I
that
saw,
is the
people I knew that
weird
didn't know.
that is the weird part about it is that a lot of
But I
people are
just think
like,
that people wanted her to win, though. I think people just wanted her to win. That they
and
didn't
I
see
mean, hey,
all those
I can't
plot
be, you know
holes.
what? And I can't even be mad at that because she been through a lot in the past, what, five, how long has this been going on now?
Mhm.
Like 5, 6 years? You know, like we ain't had no
Yeah,
Monique. We
yeah.
ain't had no Monique in like
Mm.
5, 6 years, right? Like, oh, maybe longer than that because
No, she
time
did.
been
She
moving so
did.
crazy.
Bessie.
Well,
She
but
did
your
Bessie in
Bessie
that
was a while
time.
ago, yo.
She actually did 2 movies in that time.
But I'm saying
That
Bessie was a while
that's
ago.
been that came out in the pandemic. No, that
Bessie?
came out that first year of the pandemic.
Bessie?
Yes.
Nigga, Bessie came out in 2015, bro.
Uh-huh.
The
No,
pandemic
it
is
didn't.
2020.
That wasn't
Yes, Bessie did.
2015.
Sir, I am looking. I just
That
looked it
wasn't
up because I had
2015.
to. No, no, I just looked it up. It Bessie came out in 2015. Yes, it did.
Maybe they did like a re-release of it because I know that wasn't.
Or maybe it was just one of the
They
movies
did a
that you finally
re-release.
caught up with during the pandemic. Maybe that was it.
Well, I think
Maybe
they
you
must
just
have
saw it
re-released
and
it. That's what it was.
yeah, like maybe
I
it
think
might
they
have switched to
re-released
streaming
it
service or something like that because it
on
was
a
originally on
digital platform.
HBO. But Bessie came out in
Yeah.
2015. This is before. Well, I don't. Has it been like? Here's the thing, though. How
It
long
was
has
up
it
'cause I know
been?
she was
Like
going through all
when
that
did
when
that
that movie
whole
came out.
controversy happen with Monique?
Right after
It's because I know it's
Precious.
been a while.
It started right after Precious.
Right, like not too long
That
after
started.
Precious, right? Like
Yeah, that was
so. Let
what
me.
that was. I think that was 2009. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Right.
so that happened. The controversy with her started
So
because of
basically,
that
yo, like
movie. All the other stuff.
we've been without like a proper like Monique for like almost like a little over a decade. Because I
Mhm.
mean, if that started like if
People get
Precious came
filmed
out
in
in
the time, but
2009, let's say the controversy with Lee Daniels and everything happened. Let's say that happened the following year, 2010, right? It's 2023, so that's like over a decade that we've like been without like proper access to Monique because she's basically been blackballed for what, a decade.
mhm. Yeah. I mean, it just. I just think people wanted her to win because even people who like I was watching like bloggers who don't like her. I know they don't like her, and that's
Mm-hmm.
they just. But it was worrying me because before I watched it, us all I kept hearing about how funny it was. Like she was really good in this, and it was really funny. That's all I kept hearing. I was like, "Ooh, a horror movie with comedy. This not gonna be. This not gonna feel good." It didn't feel good when we watched. So I watched it waiting, and it. I just my only regret. I just think again now knowing that the director was at least one of the writers, it that
Mm-hmm.
worries me because then you see holes in the story because in your mind it's like like I was always taught when I'm teaching someone how to read, you have to teach them how to read out loud because then they can hear what opposed to skipping over stuff in their head. Like when you reading something to yourself, you can sometimes skip over mistakes that you
Mm-hmm.
wrote or that. And I think as a writer, you have the same issues when you're something. If you wrote
Right.
this, directing this, you're gonna skip over a lot of the mistakes and direct
Mm-hmm.
around that. And I don't agree with that. That's so going to that last point, I that's one of my pet peeves is when I see a director who also wrote this, who also
Mm-hmm.
produced this, who also is one of the actors in it. Like something's gonna be wrong, and nobody was strong enough to say no, don't do this. So I don't. I don't like that dynamic because it ends up being something that's obviously flawed, and everybody else can see it, but that person who played all those different roles, forced to do. Somebody may back out or get sick, or especially with theater, you have to be ready to jump on stage as a stage manager and whomever else can do the part. But yeah, I and I'm gonna watch it. So I watched it twice already. I think I'm gonna watch it again. But, but I was just start the formation beginning. I was like, and maybe it's just me, but I think a lot of stuff that's being made now, it feels rushed. Did this feel like it was rushed? Like,
Absolutely.
did
Definitely
they?
felt rushed. But then again, I don't even know if you can really
Yeah.
call it rushed because um it had a low budget feel to it. And if you don't have uh if you don't have a budget, if you don't have a budget, it's gonna show, in the quality of the film. Um
And that may have been why everybody else
So it's hard to
it was
say. It's
Monique
hard for
and
me
then
to
others
just be
that was
like,
never
"Oh, this
seen
was a
before.
rush job." If like sometimes, like I think in film, like what I mean, like a rush job could be, the fact that you have a limited budget. You got to get this done as soon as possible, right? Like maybe you can't do as many takes, or you don't have time to keep people on set for
Maybe
as
that's the
long as
reason
it
why they
takes to
used
get
the
the right
writer
the
as a
right shot,
director.
right? Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it could have been
And
a
I'm
number of
trying
things.
to in my mind, how do
Things.
we counteract that? Like, how do we create spaces for us to get bigger budgets for our work? Because
Mhm.
I think if it had a more seasoned director, like get what's his name, Key to produce, no
Like,
Pill
like
to
Jordan
produce
Peele.
to direct
Yeah,
this, or at least
yeah.
a Jordan Peele. I don't know about Jordan Peele, or like a director who 27.
Mhm.
I can't remember nobody's name right now. Um, who it just was about to come out. A director who has had experience with this genre, or a director who has a wider range of film. That should have been. And I'm not saying this person isn't good. Have him on as a consultant if he wrote it, but it just it should have one. Sometimes a budget can be what it is if you have the
Mhm.
right person
Yeah,
to come
yeah,
on
yeah,
and
yeah.
partner.
Absolutely. I
But
agree with you 100%. Like on that one. Now I'm not really sure what it was. Like what caused this.
yeah,
um. But yeah, don't call it a comeback. Not yet.
what
Not
caused
yet.
what?
This
I think it was a
this movie.
good. I think a good, like, not comeback, but
Mhm.
I know what Monique is capable of, and
Right.
I can see glimpses of that
Right.
even through this script. Like, Monique is fucking the truth, even in
But
through this, but a lot of elements was against her.
now hold on. I want to say something though. That being said, I'm gonna put together a
Mhm.
list of films that I think we probably have seen most, if not all of them, that I think are
Right.
comparable to this film. And I think we should watch them because I think there's a
Mhm.
conversation there around the horror genre, and particularly like this kind of horror genre, like the deranged killer thing.
Right.
I think there's a conversation to be had about like how our how we consciously view those types of roles, and whether or not there's a bias there. That because I honestly had to like internal conversation with myself, asking myself essentially, was Monique's performance as bad as I thought it, as I think it is, or am I just predisposed? Do I possess a predisposition, that some type of predisposition that makes it very difficult for me to believe Black people in those roles? Because I started thinking about other
I think the right
films.
combination of script, actor, director makes a difference.
Can you give me an example?
We didn't say any of these things about Peele's plays. Peele's because it was the right combination of actors, the script was tight,
hold
the
on though.
direction was tight.
Where did Peele, the one movie that Peele has done where he produced a kind of like murderous Black family, huh?
It was 2.
What'd you say?
Didn't he do Nope?
He didn't know, but there was no murderous Black person. There was no like deranged murderous Black person in Nope. And there was no murderous deranged Black person. So what I'm saying is that, like, I think that there's a conversation to be had around our ability to really embrace, you know, like I think about like Robert De Niro and Cape Fear, right? Like I had no problem with that. I think that there's a number of like deranged killer type films where the protagonist is white, like, you know, the Fatal Attraction. You know what I'm saying? But then when we see ourselves in those roles, is it like outside of like the acceptable behavior that we within our culture that makes it a problem? I really was trying to figure out, I was really trying to ask myself, like, did I really have this much of a problem with Monique's performance? Now, like, this is somebody who I admire and am a fan of. And then I'm thinking about her Precious role. So
I didn't
like,
understand you were that first.
Okay. So then, like, I'm thinking about Precious. Right. And so I noticed she's capable, right? Like, when it comes to hitting certain beats as an actor, I know that Monique is capable. So, like, why did I hate this performance so much? And I really had to start thinking and asking myself the question if this particular type of role, this idea of the deranged killer who just kills for enjoyment, right? Because, like, we know why in the story, in the context of the story, we understand and Precious, we learn why she killed her family, right? There was a motivation behind that.
Yeah.
But then why she invited all these people to her home, knowing that she was probably going to have to kill them to protect her secret, and then doing it in such a nonchalant way, like this just deranged, like, I enjoy killing, and then the enjoyment in the kills itself.
She said a lot of things. I think she was like, there was a lot of things that I've heard about you that I liked, and a lot of stuff I didn't believe. I think it was something along those lines. I get what you're saying,
and just wanted to test the theory.
Precious,
like, even if that's the case. Right, like
Precious,
in Precious, she was playing in Precious. Right, she was playing like a real person, so like a real life person that is going through a lot of the things that people that you and I know are going through, right? Like, so when we hear about these horrendous behaviors, you know what I'm saying? Like, you and I, you know, we work in education. So we know that our kids are going through some horrendous shit at home. Right. And like, we understand, you know, like, without excusing it, we also understand that like generational trauma exists. But I'm talking about seriously, like within the horror genre of films, there is that, there's the masked superstition, like supernatural killer, where you put Jason and Freddy and Michael Myers and Chucky and all of them, right? And then there's like the demon section. There's the haunted house section. The spirit out for vengeance. You know what I'm saying? Like the innocent soul lost who's now terrorizing people until they find justice section. And then there's like just the deranged, mentally like fucked up person.
It's the
who kills
fanciful
people.
world. Like the only movie that I think ever, if we're speaking from that perspective that you said, that would be, and I don't think it was comfortable, but somehow that type of person is depicted in, it's a possibility for a black man to be that, and that was Candyman. I think that was the only film that.
But see, even Candyman
It felt too real.
He was just black, right? Like, but he existed within that bucket, that deranged, like that spirit out for justice.
But stereotypically, you can see a man being a monster. You cannot see a black woman being a monster. I think that's still.
So I just started one movie. I just started one movie. And we can, like, literally, I think we should research this, Nate. I think we should pull up movies. But Thin Line Between Love and Hate. Lynn Whitfield.
Okay, but that was still. But that woman exists though in our narrative. That woman still exists. That's a lure.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that, so then, like, yeah, that's what I think we should talk about, and maybe in the context of film, do some research on to find out if that's something like this idea of the deranged killer who enjoys killing, and whether or not that's something that ever works for black folk.
But I think that's still an issue. Like, we are more willing to accept that from a black male character than we are from a black woman character.
Well, I respectfully, I would be willing to challenge you on that, because the only movie that I can think of right now that comes to mind is and I can't even think of the name of it, but it was the one with what was it? Not Omar Epps, and it was a Netflix film that came out during the pandemic, but it was Omar Epps and Nia Long. And I remember thinking, this fucking movie's horrible, because I just couldn't.
I think she let him in her house or something.
They were like they had been past lovers or something like that, or it was somebody she knew from her past that she ran into. And he wasn't so much like he murdered some people. It was more for him. It was more of a stalkerish type of situation, right? But I'm just on the fence. I'm just really on the fence. Like, was Monique's performance what I thought it was, or is there a bias that exists that just prevents me from lauding her performance the way that everybody, like, a lot of people are like lauding her performance, like, oh, this is the greatest performance.
But I think, like, in this particular,
and I'm just like, what the fuck are y'all talking about?
I think, and then this is, I get what you're saying, but I think the reason a lot of people like this one, people just wanted, and I think they almost needed Monique to win again. And on the other side of it, I think it was almost like what we wanted her comedy to be. Like, Monique was always self-deprecating and anti-skinny bitches, stuff like that. But it wasn't, it was a different type of comedy. And even in, like, some of her other movies, it was her brand of comedy, what we knew her stand-up comedy to be. So because this was like a serious movie, That was off to me. But what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying, I get it. I understand it because I'm trying to think of any films where the woman was the killer, the black woman was the killer, or there wasn't like a one-off type of crime show or something. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of one. I really can't think of one that was that. And the only other one that I could think of, and Lynn Whitfield would be the closest, because she was willing to kill somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But Candyman, only one, unless, and I don't add all of those fanciful horror movies like the Eddie Murphy and the Dracula and stuff. I don't want to add because that's more fanciful. But like
Yeah,
the
that doesn't.
ones
It
that
doesn't
were
fit.
kind of
It doesn't fit.
based on some type of folklore,
It
but
doesn't.
that was
It
he was the
doesn't.
only one that was, and that was based off. I want to say that was based off a real person,
Mm-hmm.
Candyman.
No, I don't know. I don't think so.
I want to say that was based off a real. It was either Chicago or New York killer. I'm gonna try
No, I
to
don't think so.
look that
I
up
don't
real
think
quick
so.
because I could have sworn it was. I wasn't. I some for some reason I thought that was real, but that's the only movie where I. But again, that's still a man. That's still a black man, and for some reason, in my opinion, that would be more acceptable for people than if it was a black woman. So maybe that's why I read it this way. Like if we add a little bit of humor, it won't be as, and that's you have to separate the character from the actual person because then
Mm-hmm.
people don't take it seriously. But I think as it's now it's out, I think it was a wave of love in her direction. Just been winning. She won the trial against Netflix. She won, she got her Netflix special finally, and now she's doing it. And then there's another film that's coming out. So I just think it's just all love. But I think the real review, not the real reviews, the reviews like yours will come out where they kind of split in terms of um digging deep inside of it or just on the surface like this didn't do it for me. But
Mm-hmm.
I would have never, that's an interesting take. Uh and it's an interesting take because, but would you have brought this up if the character was the husband? It it that's another thing that's weird to me. I think it's possible, but they put her with a white man.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't I that was
Mm-hmm.
that was a little off putting to me at the beginning, but I was like, well, just rock with it. That's what it is. But because they didn't fit. They didn't look like they fit together, but casting
Mm-hmm.
is what it is sometimes. But I don't know. That's a Now that's gonna make me start thinking about films that I've seen, and I can't.
Right.
Well, and again, serial killers aren't typically black. They in real life.
But here's the
So
thing. I don't know if it has to
I
be.
think
I
that
don't
often.
know. I don't know if it has to be a serial killer, Nate. I just think there's the deranged. Like, I don't know if I would call her character technically a serial killer. Like, she had the reason or the motivation in both instances. Like, she didn't, her husband was fucking up financially. She killed the family for the insurance money. Um, she was at risk of being found out about that because now you've invited people into your house that have learned your secret, so they gotta go. You know what I'm saying? I think that
Right.
the deranged part of it is the enjoyment that she was taking in it, and like you know, the antics behind it, which we've seen in plenty of films, right? But we haven't seen a lot of that in films with black leads. So I just wonder if maybe her performance was outstanding and I just can't see it because I'm like somehow predisposed
Right.
to not really being able to accept that from a black character.
I totally get that because there are things that I often watch on the other side. Like if ever see anybody being a pedophile or
Mm-hmm.
not that we don't think that those things exist, but I did, for example, I saw there was a post going around on social media of if you've ever been molested by a member of the clergy, you can seek, you know,
Mm-hmm.
counsel. And the images that were being put out was this young black uh, minister um, and a little looked like a Hispanic girl. And I was like, that's weird. Why would you put a black face on this? And it was just weird to me that I was seeing it that way because that wasn't my experience. You know, now if you're talking about a black church, yeah, but this was a man that looked like he was Catholic, you know, and it was actually it was depicting if you've ever been molested from in a Catholic school or Catholic church. It was very specific, and it was very weird to me that it was like a black clergy person in that space. And I now that you say it that way, I can understand why you would be on kind of not on the fence, but it's I think a lot of people liked it.
Mm.
I haven't
It
heard
seemed like a
any
lot of people. It seemed like a lot of people liked it.
that and that and it is weird. It is a weird thing because
Even the
even for
one
me,
review on Rotten Tomatoes basically said the movie sucked, but damn, uh,
Monique.
Monique.
But that was that's my perspective. I did not I thought they probably for financial reasons they filled up the cast with a bunch of unknown actors, which is not necessarily an issue, but they were not to the caliber. It was very distinct that it was Monique and then the rest of them.
Mhm.
And that's a recipe for disaster. But I only when I watched it the second time, I only watched Monique. I didn't watch anybody else. I only watched for her on it because it was I just liked her performance. And if you isolate everything else, script, whatever you see, spectacle, when you just see her. Now there were moments that like her when it went to her running and chasing after them, that was hilarious to me. I still laughed both times I saw it.
Mm.
But beyond that, it just I could only see her performance in it. And the one young lady that was a reader, because I was just curious, and it was like stuff that why is this in here? Like the young lady who played her mother. That's the I can't remember her real name, but she was in the TV show Different World. The one who played her mother, like that felt like a scene that we didn't need to have. It was a lot of stuff like that in it. Like, why is this in here? This doesn't make sense. Or it I don't know. It just was a weird space to me, but
Mm.
I get your perspective on why you didn't see her in this and why you couldn't
Yeah,
see her, but
I thought it was trash. I thought the whole movie was trash.
I'm gonna challenge you to watch it again
I'm not
and just
watching that shit a third time. You must be out your goddamn mind. Hell no. I'm not watching it a third time. I
see
watched
her
it
and just
twice, Nate.
see
Ain't nobody else in the movie, Nate. I was only watching her.
right.
No, I ain't doing
Yeah.
that again. Hell no.
Yeah. And
No,
see
I'm just gonna.
that's the hard part because They could have got. Oh, they could have
But
got
I will say this:
somebody else.
at the end of the day, yo, I hate to have to say these things, but I had to keep it 100 for our show because ultimately I just kept saying to myself like Monique could have did better than that. She could have did better than that. Like she could
But
have
again, that's
really.
direction though. That's we
Yeah, no,
sometimes
I get it. I get it.
things,
It's not solely her fault. Like you know what I mean? Like you have to take the direction that the director gives you. You have to work within the confines of the script and the direction and the production as a whole as an actor.
right,
I get it. Um,
right.
the crazy thing is, I thought this performance was horrible, and yet I fully believe that Monique could have turned this performance. Like I believe in the right hands, right? Like this could have been another Oscar-nominated performance for Monique.
If it was another, if the whole cast was no name, do you think you would have the same feeling for it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And now that you bring it up, I think that's part of the problem. I'm like, for Monique to do something that like far to the left of what we normally expect from her, she
Mm-hmm.
should have had she should have had peers in those roles to like support that process. If that makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
It
Like
does.
I think that who you're on stage performing with is just as important as the role you're playing, right? Because I think that your performance can
Right.
land differently if you are performing with folks that are not on your level, so to speak.
But
You know what I'm
see,
saying?
in
So
different
like,
formats, I think it's different for, and what I mean by it's different. So you can have a piece where you're supporting actors in theater,
mm-hmm,
sometimes on TV, depending on what type of show it is, and you can have a breakout character. I think film is very hard to have everything really fall on the shoulders of one person, and then you have a supporting cast where their weight wasn't pulled as much, and it just because it was moments where Monique wasn't on the screen, and
mm-hmm.
I was over it. And then when she came back, that's what I was there for. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I think we should tap into them other pieces before you give your final verdict on this piece.
Look, I gotta give my final verdict on the piece as it is, but I you know
I mean,
for me
because you
it's
just gave us a
always
hypocrisy.
it's always gonna live in the annals of like what if. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, what if Nia Long had been playing the young lady who had the psychic powers, and what if Omar Epps was her boyfriend? And you know,
But
what
but
if Mike?
again, I think again, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What if like you want to put some comedy in it? Like, what if Mike Epps was the guy that was like the cameraman? You know what
But
I'm
see, that's what I
saying?
mean. That's what I mean. So if you're going to infuse comedy in it, you have to be able to at least bounce. It can't be Monique bouncing all this comedy off herself,
Right in
and
the
them
midst
people not knowing how
of
to
yeah, yeah. You know,
not
I
knowing
I
how to
don't
carry
I don't want to write this performance off as just like
it.
this horrible thing. I'm like you know what I'm saying like but you're right. I think that Lee Daniels being the producer, the financier. I'm guessing. Um, Yeah, I would have invested a little bit more in this. I would have given her the things that she needed to really play with that role
Right.
in a way that would have produced what I think we all know Monique was capable of. But what we got was just not it.
And that's definitely a conversation for another time too. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because he didn't skimp on anything to get his name put up first over top of everything. But if you didn't give the piece that you're promoting
Mm-hmm.
that same caliber of attention, then I think that that's a problem. But I see that in a lot of producer directors. Like they
Oh,
want
so
their
yeah, we
name,
should talk about that.
huh?
We should talk about that.
Yeah, guys,
Because it's funny, actually, what you about to say. I think what you about to say, I actually don't see a whole lot of that.
you
I
don't.
don't see a whole like when you watch movies, like unless there's some movies that you watching that I'm just not. I actually don't see. I'm actually always surprised when I see a film this kind of being touted around on the name of like the producer or someone else. So like when I saw Jordan Peele's name attached to Candyman, right? The
Mm-hmm.
remake, which is a Nia
Right.
DaCosta film. And it was like brought to you by Jordan Peele. You know what I'm saying? And I remember the first time I saw people really doing that, or the first time I noticed it, was when Quentin Tarantino was doing it for Robert Rodriguez.
Uh-huh.
And I remember noticing, I was like, and it was like, because it took me a minute to realize what was happening. I'm being a big Tarantino fan, thinking I'm getting ready to go see a Tarantino movie, and then I like read the fine print, and I was like, wait, who was Robert Rodriguez? But it was like presented by or like brought to you by Quentin Tarantino.
Right.
And then, most of Lee Daniels' films I feel like have been either
They
Lee
did the same
Daniels
thing with
films.
Precious. They did the same
Uh
when Precious came out. It said Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry presents. It's
okay. So yeah. So that whole like presents thing, yeah, I'm like, bro, like just
it's
throw,
it's to me
it's
it's
a double
and we're
edged sword
definitely
because I feel like,
I definitely want to talk about this in a broader show, but it's to me it's tacky, but I understand from a producer aspect that's the only place that they have to market themselves,
well, here's the
even though
thing.
they take home
I
most
I
of
I
the money.
don't know. I'm not gonna throw it on this thing where they just trying to market themselves. I actually think that there's this. I do feel like it's this honest. There might be a little bit of an honest kind of like endeavor to promote the film, right? Like you want the film to succeed. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, so like what I'm saying, like Nate Couser is like an award-winning producer or director or
Mhm.
both, who has a lot of accolades and your name is good. You know what I'm
But
saying?
they want to be out front now,
And
like the
well,
actors
I
are.
don't know. Here's the thing: I don't know if that's the case though. Like,
Well, but
cause
look
I
at it
could
from this
see, like
perspective.
I could see you being somebody that's like you make it, and now you know what I'm saying. Like I come to you and I'm like, Nate, yo, you remember me? We used to do shows together and shit back in Baltimore before you was Hollywood and shit. Well, I got this script right here, right, and I want to direct it. And we would have that conversation, right? Like, nah, nigga, like
Right.
you know the rules of theater. You can't do both. Pick one. All right, I ain't gonna write. All right, I wrote it. Like you pick the director. I'm the writer.
Mhm.
All right, but then let's say I don't know another friend of ours becomes the director. Now
Right.
you got the name. Neither one of us. This is our first like major feature film, and you sinking. Like you're investing a good chunk of your money into making this happen. And it's like
Mhm.
everybody knows at this point who Nate Couser is, but don't nobody know who George G. Oliver is, and don't nobody know who
Mhm.
this director is. So it's like, Nate Couser presents, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like how I got tricked into my first Robert Rodriguez movie. Now, mind you, I like Robert Rodriguez movies. Like I've seen all of them. You know what I'm saying? And he's a director that when I hear his name is attached to something, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm probably gonna check that out, right? So that's the guy that directed movies like Hostel and Machete. I think the first Machete. He did one of the El Mariachi movies. But long story short, I probably wouldn't have gone to see that film if the original film that I saw didn't have Quentin Tarantino's name attached to it. So I don't know if it's Quentin Tarantino putting himself in the forefront as much as it is him utilizing like the power of his name to push someone else forward. Because it's not like
I think I agree. I agree on the side where that is definitely, I believe that's how it started. But now you have people like, for you to put your name, so if you look at the image of it, his name is bigger than the title is. So if you do something like that, your job as producer is to find the money. So I'm gonna need for you to step back from putting your name on something so big if you didn't do all that you could do to raise enough money to make this piece as big as it should have been, or as good as it could have been with you, if you wanted a better director or you wanted better actors. Because in this I noticed also Monique and her husband name came right under Lee Daniels' name. That means they invested some money into this.
Right.
So for that reason alone, you should have put more money into better actors, or at least found actors that would have bartered with you if you gave them an executive director credit or something like that. But again, I'm done watching movies like this where you're just getting off by somebody's name alone, and the quality of putting the whole thing together wasn't invested into. I'm not gonna keep watching movies because this person's in it. Is it a good movie? No, then I'm not watching it because it's just a waste of time to keep. It's a waste of time and money to keep on putting films out there that's not good, and you just trying to get it out there in record time. It's not beneficial to me, and a lot of those things are things that I really want us to invest in conversation wise. Like I definitely want us to talk more about the perception, like measuring a Lynn Whitfield versus a Monique in this situation. Are we ready to see that on film, on stage, on camera? Are we ready to really see that? Is that an image that we're comfortable with seeing right now?
Yeah, I really want to. I really want to have that discussion. I really do.
Without it being stereotypical, like she's not
exactly. Because the first, but and it's funny because like that's the proof in the pudding right there. When I brought up the Lynn Whitfield role, and I was trying to use it as an example to kind of like prove my point, you reminded me that Lynn Whitfield, her character at the end of the day is based in this reality. Like we know women who have been misused by men to such an extent that it pushes them like over the proverbial edge. Where now they're doing things that they wouldn't have normally done because they're so hurt. And it's like, oh, and immediately I was like, yeah, you're right. Like that's.
But they put her. They
really happens.
They served her to us in a way that was digestible. Like,
well, I think they served it to us in a way that was real. Like, I think we all understood. Like, even though we were watching some crazy shit, and that was the thing. Okay, so that was the thing. Like in the Thin Line situation, we was watching her do some crazy shit, but we all understood why. We were like, she fell for this man. He dogged the shit out of her, and now she's fucked up, and she wants her get back, right? Like everybody understood that. So while we was watching her do this crazy deranged shit, we was like, nah, nigga, you did that. Like you know what I'm saying? Like,
just caught.
So then
I just caught this connection though.
So like this particular movie, it was like I'm watching her do this deranged crazy shit, and I'm like,
but it was the same stuff
what?
She did
like, why are you tripping? Like, why are you killing people? Like, what is your purpose? Like, I didn't have that connection with this role. Like, I could not fathom why the fuck she would do that. Like, even the explanation behind why she killed her family, I was willing to accept that, like movie magic, but I could not buy her motivations that the movie was really set around.
But what is weird, and I get that because I see the connect. I just caught the connection between her and Liv Whitfield. We watched Monique beat the shit out of herself, cut her finger off, all those things, kill her children. We saw her, but the difference was, seemingly the difference was, Monique didn't have a justifiable reason behind it, and it was really her. It was her fear of having to be poor again that she did not want to.
So I'll go a little deeper. I gave her that. Like, that's why you killed your family. Okay, that's some bullshit. But all right, I'll give you that. It was the circumstances around what we were watching on film, like the particular circumstance that she was in, that she invited these people into her home, knowing what she did.
Get over that one part.
I can't get over that. I cannot get over that, Nate. It's like Nate. If I had 3 kilos of cocaine stashed under my floorboards, and then I'm going to invite a drug sniffing dog into my house to play catch. Like, why would I do that? That doesn't make.
I mean, the only thing that I justified that with was she didn't believe this person could really do this.
But why would you take that chance? Yo, let me tell you something, Nate. If I had 3 kilos of cocaine under my door, like under my floorboards right now, and you knocked on my door like, hey, nigga, let's have a drink, and you brought your little chihuahua with you, I'd be like, nah, nigga, like, he can't come in. Like, he can't come in. So why the hell would I invite a drug sniffing dog into my house?
Some of the stuff that was said, that was physically said. She said, if it was only one of you, I would have let you go.
Nate, it don't make no fucking sense.
It don't.
It don't. It ain't nothing you can say to make it make sense. And that's part of the problem with the movie, is that at the end of the day, a lot of shit just didn't make no sense.
It was definitely some whole thing.
It was an obvious, like, let's showcase Monique, but then that particular performance just didn't.
Holes happen. Some of the holes in stories like this happen when we're working with someone who does not know how to turn something that's written, say it was a book or a short story, into a film script or to a stage play. Sometimes when you just try to use the same source material in this, it does not translate well, because in order for it to come to film or TV or stage position, you have to fill in some of those holes that you are allowed to. In a book, you can have those holes because your mind has to suspend in belief anyway. But for film, TV, and stage, you have to fill in those, and that's where a strong director comes in. That's the importance of a strong director in those 3 formats. In a book, you can have holes because your mind naturally fills them in when you're reading. When you're watching something, it does not make sense. Even if she didn't believe that they could really do this, it don't make sense for her to want them to come there. It just Why would you already got away with this? Fuck with anybody's name.
Mm-hmm.
Like you supposedly have all this money. You don't need any more money. Why would you need more publicity?
Yeah.
But
So
it just
tell us,
it's weird.
y'all, in the comments, did you see the reading? If you saw it, tell us what you thought about it. Tell us what your thoughts are. I got a feeling that this conversation is not yet over. But yeah, let us know in the comments what you thought about the reading. Monique is back,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been a long time.
Right.
So, Monique, if you're listening, welcome back. We are so glad to see you back in your element, doing what you do. Um, and hopefully, you know what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
like you got some more heat. You got more heat coming. But tell us what you thought in the comments. We're gonna continue this discussion a little bit more around just this genre and what it means for Black folk. Um, and yeah, I think I got a list of movies that I need to compile that we probably should take a look at and talk about. And then Nate and
Mm-hmm.
I are also gonna have us a production meeting real soon to start talking about the long-term trajectory of binge-worthy podcast. Um, and that sounds like we're gonna have to just find topics that we vehemently are diametrically opposed on, so that we can have some arguments. Because that's what the people want to hear. They want to hear us go at it, and I'm going to find me some drinky drink to inject into the conversation as well. So, but no,
Sounds
man,
like a plan.
it's good to see y'all. We'll be back next week. Topic coming soon. But let us know what you thought in the comments. Thank you for watching. This has been Binge-Worthy Podcast, Season 4, Episode 5. Don't call it a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, so let me know what your Saturday looks like.